One thing I've noticed after spending time with business owners is that most think they'll know when it's time to sell. Like there's going to be a moment where it suddenly feels obvious. Maybe they're burned out, maybe growth has slowed, maybe a friend sold recently and now they're wondering if they should too. Or maybe they just wake up one day and think, all right, I'm ready. But in my experience, personal readiness and business readiness are two very different things. And personal readiness is usually the harder one to deal with. Because selling a business isn't just a transaction, it's a major identity shift. It changes your role, your routines, your relationships, your sense of purpose, and in many cases, the entire rhythm of your family's life. A lot of owners underestimate that part of it. Hi, I'm Ryan Guth. I sold my own business years ago. I wrote a book called Permission to Exit, and today I work with founder-led business owners who are trying to think clearly about what life looks like before, during, and after a sale. Here's what I've learned. The owners who navigate an exit well aren't always the ones with the biggest companies or the highest offers. They're the ones who prepared personally before they prepared financially. So I want to walk you through 4 signs that you may be ready personally to sell your business. This is the kind of readiness that comes with doing enough internal work to make a clear decision from a position of strength, not pressure. And if you're already thinking about any of this and you want to walk through your specific situation, there's a link in the description to schedule a free call with me. No pitch, just a real conversation, just to help you navigate your exit a little bit better. Okay, let's begin with sign number 1. You no longer need the business to prove something. This is a difficult one because most founders build their business during a period of life where achievement and identity become tightly connected. The company becomes proof that you are capable, proof that you can provide, proof that you matter, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of great companies are built that way. But here's what I've noticed over time. The healthiest exits happen when the owner's self-worth isn't completely tied to the business anymore. The business becomes something they own. It's an asset rather than something that owns them. I've worked with owners who technically could have sold years earlier, but emotionally, they weren't ready. They still needed the scoreboard, the title, the growth targets, and the momentum and the daily affirmation that came with being a founder. Without that, they weren't sure who they were. That's why some owners stay too long. The business doesn't need them anymore, but they still need the business. One of the hardest transitions after sale is figuring out who you are without the business. It sounds simple until you live it. I write about this in Permission to Exit, my book, because people consistently underestimate how disorienting that shift can be when they haven't thought through it ahead of time. If this is resonating with you, do me a favor and hit the like button. It genuinely helps grow this channel and allows me to keep making content like this for founders who need it. All right, let's look at sign number 2. You've started thinking about life outside of the company. Founders tend to put off this conversation for years because business always feels like the priority. There's always another milestone, another expansion, another year where things need your attention. And before you know it, your kids are older, your parents are older, your spouse has spent years adjusting their life around the business, and at some point, the questions start to change. It's no longer, how much bigger can this get? It becomes, what do I actually want life to look like over the next 10 years? I remember writing in the book about an owner who sold successfully from a financial standpoint, but struggled personally afterward because he never built a life outside the company. Once the business was gone, there was a vacuum. He tried to fill it with travel and material purchases and distractions, but none of it touched the underlying problem. The owner who transitions best already has some vision for what comes next. That doesn't mean retirement. Most entrepreneurs have zero interest in retirement. They're not going to sit still, but they've started prioritizing different things. More flexibility, mentoring younger operators, investing, spending time with family without carrying the daily operational weight of their responsibility on their shoulders. They've started thinking about life beyond the company in a real, intentional way. If any of this is hitting close to home, the link in the description will take you to a free call where we can walk through your situation together. It's worth having a conversation before things start moving faster than you expect. Sign number 3, you're more interested in stewardship than accumulation. This is where a lot of entrepreneurs naturally evolve as they get older and as the business matures. Early on, the focus is usually survival and growth. Build the company, create momentum, increase revenue, and keep pushing. But eventually, if the business succeeds, the questions get more nuanced. How much is enough? What am I actually optimizing for right now? What do I want this wealth to do for my family or my community? How do I create opportunities for my kids instead of problems? Good founders eventually come to understand that wealth isn't just a scoreboard, it's a responsibility. And once that shift happens, the decision-making changes. They start caring more about protecting what they've built. They start thinking about estate planning, family dynamics, their charitable intent, tax strategies, long-term security, and what real liquidity looks like for their household. And here's something I've seen consistently. Entrepreneurs spend decades becoming experts at building wealth, but very little time preparing to manage the consequences of having it. Boom, mo money, mo problems. Let's pour one out for Biggie, because once the transaction closes, you don't just have a business problem anymore. You've got a personal balance sheet problem, a family governance problem, an investment problem, a tax problem, and sometimes even a purpose problem. The sale matters, but it's only one piece of a much larger transition. Sign number 4, you've started valuing optionality more than control. This one is subtle, sneaky. A lot of entrepreneurs stay in their business because they like control. They know the business, they trust themselves, and they know how to solve problems inside of it. But eventually, some owners start to recognize that total control comes with a real cost. You're carrying the stress, the payroll responsibility, the operational burden, the risk concentration, all of it, all the time. And at some point, they realize that liquidity creates options instead of obligations. Options to work differently, to invest differently, to spend their time differently, and to take risks from a position of strength instead of necessity. The best exits aren't usually driven by fear or exhaustion. They're driven by clarity. The owner realizes they've already won the game they originally set out to play, and now the question is what the next chapter looks like on their terms. It's a very different mindset from someone who's reacting emotionally or waiting until circumstances force their hand. And to be clear, none of this means you should sell tomorrow. That's not the point. Personal readiness shows up quietly long before a transaction should ever happen. It shows up in your priorities, your thinking, your conversations, your relationship to the business, and your relationship to time. If you're recognizing some of these signs in yourself, it is worth having a conversation before you find yourself in the middle of a process that's moving faster than you expected, because it moves fast. Once offers start showing up and that momentum builds, decisions can get emotional quickly. That's why preparation matters so much. And I mean preparing the person selling the business, not just the business itself. If you're a founder doing meaningful revenue, and you're starting to think about any of these questions, click the link in the description to schedule a free call. We'll talk through where you are, what you've built, and what the next chapter could look like for you and your family. No pressure, no pitch. And if this video gave you anything to think about, please give it a like, hit subscribe, and share with a fellow founder or business owner who you think could use it. It genuinely helps this channel reach who needs to see it most. I thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.